Why, hello. Oh, it's been a while, hasn't it? Oh, it has been a while. We took a little bit longer in Germany than we expected, but here we are. We are in Italy, as you can see. We're in Rome, actually. But we have been all over Italy. We've actually I've spent a bit of time here before I came to you with the novel. Italy, a great centre of art, music, painting, fashion. Yes, wonderful place. But unfortunately, not a great centre of literature. And that has rather translated into our choice of book for this month, which is not an Italian book, because I couldn't find any Italian books for our purposes. This is an English book set in Italy, set in Sicily to be precise. It is Anne Radcliffe's A Sicilian Romance. So we're going to kill two birds with one stone. And by that, I mean this book is both set in Italy, so for the end of our grand tour, and it's a Gothic. And you will appreciate, if you have read this, why this is the only Gothic we are doing. The Gothic is very, very important as a genre, but from pure reading pleasure, it really, really hasn't stood the test of time. And although the Gothic novel spawned Gothic across others, I believe Laura Trevelyan talked about Australian Gothic, the original Gothic novels of the 18th century are rather tedious. I'm sorry. I don't want to sound terribly, terribly rude, but they're tedious if you had a go at it. See, did you fare any better than I did? I couldn't finish it. I know, but I couldn't finish it. There were far too many other interesting things. But the Gothic novel, as the 18th century, is really very important for genres that come after it. That's the thing you really have to remember, is no Gothic novel, no matter how tedious they are, no Frankenstein, no Wuthering Heights, no Jane Eyre, no Dracula. So no, some of the Gothic qualities of Dickens. Or even think of Crawley Manor in Vanity Fair is incredibly Gothic. These are things that owe their existence to these novels. So they are very, very important. They were extremely popular in the 1790s, which is when Anne Radcliffe is writing. They were invented the first Gothic novel is 1763, Horace Walpole, The Castle of Otranto. They're usually set in foreign countries, often Italy. Germany has a Gothic tradition, actually, that's a bit more extreme than the English one. But on the whole, we see it very much as an English tradition. It is characterized by being often in a foreign place, an isolated heroine who is incredibly vulnerable. She might be an orphan, a ward of a wealthy man. In the Sicilian Romance, the girls are the neglected daughters of the count, whose new wife is a incredibly jealous woman, and he spends all his attention on his son and leaves his daughters to be brought up in the gloomy castle. Though I don't know how gloomy a castle can be in Sicily. I mean, really. I could see the gloomy castle in Scotland. The Bride of Lammermoor by Walter Scott. There's another Gothic tale for you. But I can see Scotland or the Yorkshire Moors as very, very Gothic. But Sicily, there you go. I don't know that Anne Radcliffe had been to Sicily. I don't think she had, because her Sicily is not exactly Sicily. A lot of people get their country houses destroyed by volcanoes. That's one thing that she definitely makes sure to include, since it's Sicilian. It's very melodramatic. Very, very, very melodramatic. Women who are isolated, who are vulnerable, and who are preyed upon by all these spooky noises. The Sicilian romance has a south wing of the castle where they've seen lights, and usually with the Gothic, although there is an idea that it's a ghost, it's a bit Scooby-Doo-ish, as in we all think it might be something supernatural, but it turns out to be real human things. The ghost in the South Tower is actually the mother of the children, the sister, brother and sisters, who has been locked in the tower because he wants to marry a new wife. So we have this you can see where Jane Eyre came from. So these are tropes that you will find. You will find mad woman in the attic tropes. You will find lecherous older men tropes. You do get heroines who do have to rather rescue themselves because there's no one coming to rescue them. So that does make them rather interesting, especially someone like Anne Radcliffe, who does have far more active heroines. So there's a lot of screaming, a lot of high emotion, people being promised to people that they don't love, and then all the high emotion of that. So they're very melodramatic. One of the other things that makes a Gothic rather difficult to read for a modern audience is that they're all telling. Now, if you have ever had a feedback on your writing, and the person giving feedback has said you need to show more and tell less, and you've scratched your head and thought, oh, I wonder why that is, because I can see it perfectly in my head. Read a Gothic novel. Read a Gothic novel, because they are all telling. So if you don't know what telling looks like, read one of these 18th century Gothic novels. They're all telling. And it really is this appalling barrier between the reader and the work. Because the great courtship at the beginning of this novel between Julia and Hippolytus. Oh, I wonder, is he going to be subject to the whims of the older married woman like Phaedra? Oh, yes. So it has some big screaming signposts of where this story is going. Hippolytus, and okay, she's not called Phaedra, but any little tiny understanding of ancient Greek myth, go ask her Infernal Majesty if you're not sure about ancient Greek myth. She knows all of it. All of it. But any familiarity, which was current knowledge in 18th century literary people who were reading, would actually get these references. You might have to read the little notes in the back. So things are signposted. Villains are black as black. Heroes are so purest white. But the love affair between Julia and Hippolytus is just, he sees her at a dance and she sees him as lust. It's lust. It is not love. It's lust. But of course their lives are over and their hearts are breaking when she's told that she has to marry someone else. So it's so melodramatic. In fact, it's so melodramatic that by the beginning of the 19th century, these novels are starting to get satirized. So the over-the-top melodrama is being satirized by Jane Austen. Jane Austen in Northanger Abbey uses the language of melodrama to poke fun at the idea of the Gothic novel. She was a great reader of novels. She knew exactly what she was doing. And so Jane Austen is able to take the idea that Tilney has murdered his wife, that his wife is dead, but she's read too many Gothic novels, and so obviously he murdered her, or she's somewhere in the Abbey, in Northanger Abbey. So it's very, 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 very over the top. And Jane Austen plays with this. Because it's so over the top, it does get toned down as the genre develops. Two really interesting genres come out of the Gothic. There is horror, as you would expect, something like Frankenstein, something like The Vampire by Polidori, something like Dracula, or Gothic novels. But then there is crime, because for all the spooky supernatural elements of the Gothic novel, generally speaking, these spooky supernatural things are there to stop people poking around the fact that you've got your first wife locked up in a tower. You bigamous bastard. Your children's mother is locked in a tower. And you've stolen her money, that sort of thing. So it's crime fiction. These are, so that idea of the Scooby-Doo quality of that gets taken up and developed. The supernatural gets stripped out, but the idea of finding out a crime becomes part of it. You see that with someone like Edgar Allan Poe, where, yes, you have all this Gothic and supernatural, but often a lot of it's crime. And so that's another really interesting. So it is an important genre. It's just they're not, 18th century Gothics are not readable. Well, you probably need a great deal more patience than I have. But that is it for me in terms of the Grand Tour. Next month, at the end of April, we will be back at our estate. Our estate was getting a bit of a revamp while we were on tour. And we'll be back at our estate in the end of April, and we will be reading Oliver Goldsmith's one and only novel. Oliver Goldsmith was a very famous playwright, but he only wrote one novel, The Vicar of Wakefield. It's not too long. It's a good one to start with. We've got another nice Irish writer. There are a great many Irish writers of the 18th century, so especially playwrights. So next month we will have The Vicar of Wakefield by Oliver Goldsmith. I hope that you have enjoyed the Grand Tour with me. I've enjoyed taking you on the Grand Tour. We've done some of my favourite books and some others that were less enjoyable, but I hope you did enjoy that. I will see you again once I'm back home. So, until we meet again, goodbye.